the 1970s, a great decade full of drugs, sex, and rock and roll. But everything wasn't all fine and dandy. Unemployment was on the rise, and incomes were falling. There were two events that increased the public's concerns about our environment. The first was a massive oil spill off the coast of Santa Barbara, California in 1969, and the other was the first Earth Day celebration in April 1970 in Central Park, New York City. People were afraid we were ruining the environment with greenhouse gases. In October 1973, the U.S. agreed to resupply the Israeli military to keep fighting in the Yom Kippur War. In response to this, the members of the Organization of Arab Petroleum Exporting Countries set an oil embargo. This restricted American oil supplies and prices skyrocketed. It was not until 1974 when Secretary of State Henry Kissinger had negotiated with the Israeli troop withdrawal from parts of the Sinai. The promise of a negotiated settlement between Israel and Syria was sufficient to convenient Arab oil producers to lift the embargo in 1974. In response to the public's rise in concern of the Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, and Occupational Safety and Health Administration, OSHA, were created. Congress also passed the Clean Air Act and the Water Quality Improvement Act. To guarantee families a liable income, Nixon created the Family Assistance Plan, which guaranteed families at least a minimum income level. Many people were against the FAP because it gave money to people who weren't working and earning the money, so Nixon left. In the 1970s, unemployment and inflation were both on the rise. This phenomenon is called stagflation because people began to expect prices to raise more and more. So consumers bought more and more product at the time before the prices went up. This increased demand, pushing up prices, leading to demands for higher wages, which pushed prices higher, still in a continuing upward spiral. The Southern strategy refers to the Republican Party's strategy of winning elections in Southern states by exploiting anti-African American racism among Southern white voters and appealing to states' rights. In 1971, Roe v. Wade was a case overturning a Texas interpretation of an abortion law and making abortion legal in the United States. The Roe v. Wade decision held that a woman with her doctor could choose abortion in the early months of pregnancy without restriction, and with restrictions in later months based on the right to privacy. Nixon called on the silent majority to be silent no more and let their opinions on the Vietnam War be heard. Nixon's approval ratings skyrocketed. He pledged to continue the war in Vietnam and declared he would not permit U.S. policy to be dictated by a minority staging democracies on the streets. Realpolitik is an approach to politics, diplomacy, and foreign relations that is non-ideological, as in doing what is best for the nation's interests without getting hung up on popular sentiment. For example, it is when the U.S. reached out to China in the 70s despite complaints that we wouldn't associate with communists. Both countries gained great economic benefits from better relations. Watergate was a political scandal in the 1970s in the United States, resulting from a break-in in the Democratic National Committee headquarters at the Watergate office complex in Washington, D.C. 5 men were arrested for breaking and entering These men attempted to steal valuable information that could not help Nixon get reelected.
Nixon resigned after the Watergate scandal. Now to culture.
The culture in the 1970s was full of excitement. One person in the 1970s who was very popular was Muhammad Ali. He was the heavyweight champion of the world in boxing and went on.
Float like a butterfly, sting like a bee.
Fashion was also big in the 1970s with people experimenting with bright colored clothing and bell-bottom pants. People in the 1970s were very patriotic because we had just got out of Vietnam.
'70s music is groovy. Grateful Dead, Jimi Hendrix, Elvis Presley, Janis Joplin, and Elvis's name.